You're live.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Madison City Council meeting. Today is Tuesday, April the 5th, 2022. I want to welcome all of our guests. We have a special evening tonight, and we're always great to see our students from Madison High School here. We are also streaming live and recording the meeting on the City Madison YouTube channel, so we'll be able to archive it and view it later for those who aren't here tonight. At the beginning of every meeting, we start out with removing our hats and reciting the Lord's Prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get into tonight's business. Our Father,
who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, and we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, roll call, please.
Patrick Tevino.
Here.
Jim Bartlett.
Here.
Lucy DeTillo.
Here.
Dan DeTillo.
Here.
Carla Krebs.
Here.
Josh Schaefer.
Here.
And Curtis Chapman.
Here.
Council, have you had an opportunity to review the minutes from March the 21st? If so, we'll entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
I move we approve the minutes as submitted.
I'll second.
Time for a second. Love where you're going.
I'll second.
All right. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Council and guests, before we start tonight, I'd like to begin, before we get into the heart of our agenda tonight, and have a moment of silence for Julie Brico, who passed away unexpectedly Sunday. Our thoughts and prayers are with her family and her husband Michael. They were regular attendees here at City Council and across the community. Very, very positive and great friends to myself and my wife and our community. And so if you wouldn't mind, please, just a moment of silence for Julie. Thank you. I mentioned before, one of my favorite parts about being your mayor is seeing our public safety people in action and the commitment that they and their families make and the sacrifice that they all make for our community. Tonight is special because we are doing some restructuring in Madison Fire Department. And so tonight it's going to be my honor to appoint a new Madison Fire Department chief and deputy chief. Both of these individuals have a long career in public safety. Firefighting, EMTs, specialized training, community service to the city of Madison. As you know, we pride ourselves in our history of having an all-volunteer fire department. So first I'd like to invite Ken Washer up. You're welcome to bring your wife, and I'd like to give you your oath of office and certificate of appointment and welcome you as Madison's new chief. He cleans up good, doesn't he? Normally he's working in the streets all day and is always there on call for us, and we really appreciate him. Please raise your right hand. I, Ken Washer,
I, Ken Washer,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
that I will support the Constitution of the United States of America
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and that I will faithfully
that I will faithfully
and impartially discharge my duties
discharge my duties
as Chief of the Madison Fire Department
as Chief of the Madison Fire Department
to the best of my ability
to the best of my ability
and according to law, so help me God.
and according to law, so help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, next I would like to invite our newly appointed Deputy Chief, Jeremy Cornelius. Anybody here like to shy? Just a little shy. Okay. I, Jeremy Cornelius,
I, Jeremy Cornelius,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Indiana,
and the Constitution of the State of
and
Indiana,
that I will faithfully and impartially
and that I will faithfully and impartially
discharge my duties
discharge my duties
as Deputy Chief of the Madison Fire Department
as Deputy Chief of the Madison Fire Department
to the best of my ability and according to law,
to the best of my ability and according to law.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. As I mentioned before, introducing our new chief and deputy chief, we've done a little restructuring in the fire department. I'm happy to report that former Chief Bill DeVries is still in the command structure with the Madison Fire Department. He is now moving into a different role that will allow him the time that he needs to spend with his family through a difficult time and a journey that they're on, but also continue the invaluable service that he provides to the city of Madison. So I also want to recognize both of these gentlemen for stepping up, as well as the rest of our command staff, which is Chief DeVries and Travis Connor. So again, thank you guys for everything you do. Okay, moving on from that ceremony, we'll introduce Dave Patterson of Patterson Nursery to give us an update on the spring flower bed plan. And Deputy Mayor McGee is here to also provide any insights if needed.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Dave Patterson from Patterson's Nursery. Kind of want to step back real quick and explain to everyone what we did last year. We grew and supplied your hanging baskets up and down Main Street was one. We did all the flowers that were in containers around the Broadway fountain, the flowers in the containers up and down along Main Street, and the flowers in the containers around the pool area, the city pool area. With that said, we also did the beds up and down Main Street on the north side and on the south side. When we came into these beds, the beds had a lot going on. They had a little variety of all kind of plant material, some garden art, a little bit of everything. So when Mindy got a hold of me, we wanted to try to get a theme going, a colorful theme that's up and down this road. To, I guess, to definitely let the streets look better and for the historic side of Madison to look better. So we tore out everything. We worked with Tony Sorrells and his crew, which were guys really helped us out a lot. They helped us rip grub all the soil, the old soil out, all the old plant material, and we installed three things. One was a purple salvia, one was a lacanthium, which is a Shasta daisy, and the third was a coreopsis. We went with three different varieties, one for a white flower, one for a purple flower, and one with a yellow flower. Installation went good. Everything looked good for a short time, and then the problems we had with these beds out here were pedestrians, people walking through them, their dogs, their pets, doing their urination on them and things like that. So we did lose some plant material on that. One thing with these beds we got to keep in mind, and I know I've expressed this to Mindy several times too, is that a lot of these beds are in bad locations. A lot of the parking when you get out, people are stepping on them right then and there. Some people don't have anywhere else to go in these islands, but through them. So with that, I don't know any kind of revised plan down the road. If some of the beds can be eliminated, that's probably at a talk at a later date. But what our proposal is now to do is to come in all the bare areas. We pulled all the coreopsis out because a lot of it was damaged, again, from being smashed and walked on. And we're proposing to put in, on the south side, New Guinea impatiens, which is going to be an annual. And then on the north side, we'll do begonias. We'll do a tricolor begonias. White, pink, and red on the New Guineas, and white, pink, and red actually on the begonias also. Being these are annuals and we're mixing them with perennials, it's given a chance for these perennials to grab hold and really grow and go. They've been in 1 year. It looks like now the purple salvia is really starting to come up good, and it looks like the leucanthemum, what's left of it, looks good too. So we'll get good color out of that too. But it's just going to take some time. It's going to take some patience for the color and for these plants to get established, along with some respect from everybody to, hey, we can't walk through these beds, and just try to work with them to get the color for them. Other than that, I don't know if there's any questions or anything like that. And I know we always get the call of, hey, when are we going to see some flowers? When are we going to see some color? Usually after Mother's Day. The hanging baskets, we delivered those last year around, and we helped Tim and Tony and those guys hang them. Usually right after Mother's Day, we'll get those in. We have to be in that safe zone where the frost, we're not going to get hit with that, and especially with the plant material. So with the annuals that we're going to put up and down Main Street again this year and fill in these bare spots and hopefully get some pop and splash of color in them, that probably is not going to happen until the end of May sometime. So we know we're in that safe period of temperature. I know people get antsy. It's 80 degrees last week, and then heck, we're getting snow and mixed freezing rain this Friday and Saturday, they're saying. So we're getting there. Just going to take some patience.
Dave, talk a little bit about the brick and the number of flower beds, for example, that you had to work on.
There's 70 total. There's 35 on the north and 35 on the south side. There was some brick that we had to remove because a lot of the brick's caving in. It's old, it's decrepit. Some of it needs to be eliminated, which actually widened the beds a little bit. And the downfall of it widened the bed a little bit closer to where people park and where they have to get out and walk through. But again, I think ideal down the road, I really feel that some of these beds can be eliminated. Not only for the cost, but for the wear and tear that they're taking from people. If you look at the planters that we did up and down Main, if you look at the planters around the fountain area, around the city pool, those all really, even the hanging baskets, they flushed out. We had tons of compliments of people of how good they looked. And they looked that good just because people couldn't get near them. Their dogs can't get on them. They can't walk across them. So even the raised planters down Main Street, they came out really, really well. We plan on putting the same plant material we used last year. And again, like our hanging baskets will be the Supertunias, and it'll be a multicolor of that again. Those did really well down here with the adapting sun on each side and the shade that you get on each side of the road. We did verbena, I think it was orange marmalade, and the only thing we're changing this year is the canas, and that are in all the raised planters. Instead of red, we're going to go with the yellow one for more of a pop of color. So,
You know how when those flower beds were originally installed, I mean, I know it's been a long, long time ago, and over the years they kind of took on really a lot of different character than a theme for our primary pedestrian corridor.
they did. I believe they were back in 06, somewhere between 06 and 2012, I think a lot of the beds were put in. And another thing with these beds, which is really hard to work with, to even get the perennials to get going and get them rocking, and with color, is a lot of the trees that are in these beds. They're mature, they're really absorbing a lot of the moisture that before these smaller plants can get to them. And there's some trees out there probably I'd say probably need to be removed. They're just extremely large, and they're pushing the sidewalks up, and that's what's some detrimental to some of that brick and the pavers that are around the beds.
Well, as we go through the planning for Main Street's revisioning, all of the sidewalks and all the flower beds and all the rows and all the gutters and those things, traffic signals, crosswalks, all of that is part of that discussion and planning process. And so while we, are trying to improve along the way and beautify Madison's Main Street, we know that, there's not the ideal situation because we're working with the space that we have to work with right now.
Exactly.
But it won't always be like that.
Right. And even some of the lower beds, the beds that are on the ground up and down Main Street, the ones that can be eliminated if they're in front of a high traffic area, if they're near a handicap spot that the person needs to get out and use that area. Any beds you can get raised somehow. I know many and I have spoke about this in the past. We can actually maybe start raising some of the beds that are where that application can work. That would really help the plant material there. It keeps traffic off and keeps pets out.
Thank you.
I had a few questions
Yeah.
from the constituents
Sure.
For you, and I think you've already answered one, which was, will the planting take into account differing sunlight on each side? And then she was curious about why no perennials had been planted, but some of the original ones were perennials. Why were no early spring perennials put in?
The perennials we chose for the three were the longest lasting bloomers that you could get. If you get a really early spring perennial in there like a phlox, something, or a lissum, something that's gonna be, it's usually a short term and then it's done for the year versus you really kind of feel more people are out shopping when it's warmer out. You've got more activities externally with up and down the roads. So it's the timing of the bloom that we try to shoot for. The purple salvia is a quick bloomer in the spring. You usually get 2 blooms out of that one. You get one in usually late July, early August, and then early spring. So that's the first one that will flush out. The leucanthemum will be second, and that's the white Shasta short daisy. That blooms, and you usually get 12 to 14 weeks out of that on a bloom, and then it goes into also a second bloom. And remember too, when the second blooms come around, they're not as prolific as the first bloom, so they're not as strong, not as vibrant, and not as in number either. And then the third was the coreopsis, and again, the coreopsis really took a hit from pedestrian, just getting trampled on. And the leucanthemum you can step on, it'll come back. The salvia you can walk on, it'll come back. The coreopsis did not. So, and with that in mind, the impatiens that we're putting in, we appreciate the work you guys gave us all last year. We're going to donate the impatiens on the south side and the begonias that we're going to fill in the bare areas where the coreopsis was when we pulled out. So we're going to donate that and put that in for you guys.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Well, we want Madison to be beautiful, and this is a start. We appreciate your work there and everybody in the community's patience on developing that and doing something a little different than what's been experimented with before.
Great.
Yeah, what we need is good weather and a little bit of rain, right?
A lot of sun.
A lot of sun.
Yeah. We appreciate all the work you guys give us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, well, we have a guest attorney with us tonight who is representing Madison well, and so we'll move on to resolutions or bills.
Okay, the next item we have is ordinance number 3, and Mr. Jenner suggested that the council might wish to suspend the rules and have this read by title rather than me reading the whole 6 pages. So I'm glad to read it all, or you can suspend the rules.
Motion to suspend the rules?
Second.
Can I get the vote?
Roll call vote. Patrick Tevenow,
Can we have some discussion first, before we vote?
Sure.
Can we not at least highlight the important part of the financial side of this? Can we at least read that part?
Counselor, what I was going to do, we can read the entire ordinance, but I was also going to give an overview as to why these are on your agenda today. So, but
You want to do that?
I can do that now. Maybe that might answer your question. So, ordinance 3 and ordinance 4 begin the financing structure for 2 major economic development initiatives that the city and the Redevelopment Commission has been working on for the past 2 years. One is for the expansion of Super 80 TV, and the other one is for the development of the 22-acre parcel at Cliff D Drive and Michigan Road, known as Madison Plaza Project. Both of those initiatives have been included in the Redevelopment Commission's Master Redevelopment Plan. And we have already taken through the Plan Commission and Council and Redevelopment Commission the creation of the special allocation area for Super ATV. Earlier today, the Redevelopment Commission approved an economic development agreement with Super ATV that will bring over 300 jobs, good paying jobs to the community, and help facilitate Super ATV's approximate $60 million investment in Madison. As you know, it's one of our probably quickest growing businesses here in the community. We're grateful for all of our businesses, especially Super ATV now, for the investment they're making. The second one is the Madison Plaza project, which will include, as previously announced, mixed-use development that includes retail and much-needed multifamily apartments. It's been over 2 decades, almost 25 years, since the city of Madison has seen any major development in multifamily housing, and we need it to complement our workforce. These bond ordinances, as I mentioned, begin the financing structure. The economic development agreements are executed, but the financing to provide the incentives or some of the capital that's needed for both of these developments is done through revenue bonds that are issued by the redevelopment or by the city for our TIF district. There's no direct obligation on behalf of the city of Madison taxpayer. They're fully supported by the revenue that's created by the TIF district. Our TIF district collects incremental tax revenue on commercial property, and then that incremental revenue is directed by the Redevelopment Commission to facilitate new investment. And over the course of the last 20 years since our TIF district was formed, it literally has invested tens and tens of millions of dollars, so facilitated that level of investment all across the community in roads, sidewalks, preservation, industrial development, hospitality, most recently with Cotton Mill, housing, most recently with the Tower Attack adaptive reuse on the west end of town. And so these two ordinances will be the first step in the process for issuing bonds, approving the issuance of bonds for the facilitation of over $100 million of private investment. $60 million from Super ATV and over $50 million from our co-developers with the former Madison Plaza Shopping Center. So today is the first reading. Really no comment other than the introduction of it. And then at the second reading, we'll have both the developers here to make a presentation to council and answer any questions that council or the public might have about the financing.
To save Mr. Garland's voice, son, can you also give an overview of what the financial package you're proposing for these bonds is?
Well, again, I think we're stepping beyond the scope of today. And these are for revenue bonds, and the ordinance number 3, as you've read, will include a bond issue for the amount of $3,160,000 for phase 1. The bond resolution will also carry with it a phase 2 series in the amount of $3,820,000. And then on ordinance 4, which is the Madison Plaza development, that is a $5 million bond. We at Redevelopment Commission today did approve engaging an underwriter for the bonds. We also have a financial advisor that works with us that does all of the economic impact studies. Our Economic Development Commission will be meeting to evaluate the fiscal aspects of the bond issues and the proposed development, and we'll make a recommendation to council. So this is the first of 3 readings.
Mr. Mayor, do we have a motion and a second on the floor still to be voted on?
The motion and the second was about abbreviating and not reading the full ordinances, but reading them into the minutes by title.
Suspending the rules.
That was the first motion, suspending the rules. And we were about to take a vote on that, and then Councilman Chatham had a question.
Was Councilman Chatham's question related to suspension of the rules, or?
That was the motion that is on the table with regard to suspension of the rules, and maybe I answered his question.
Yeah, my question,
reading
my
all the
concern was not reading of the entire ordinance, but the highlight that was provided is sufficient for me.
Has the mayor's explanation flesh that out for you
Yes.
sufficiently?
Thank you.
Krebs. Yes. Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Lucy Gattillo.
Yes.
Josh Schaefer.
Yes.
Curtis Chatham.
Yes.
James Bartlett.
Yes.
And Dan Cotillo.
Yes.
Okay, with that, ordinance number 3, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, authorizing the issuance of the City of Madison, Indiana Economic Development Revenue Bonds and approving and authorizing other actions in respect thereto. That's the first reading of ordinance number 3. Ordinance number 4, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, authorizing the issuance of the City of Madison, Indiana Economic Development Revenue Bonds and approving and authorizing other actions in respect thereto. Basically, same caption, but for the different project.
Thank you. Moving on, are there any reports, recommendations, and other business from the standing or select study committees of the City Council? Council, I had mentioned to you earlier that we have an opening on the Redevelopment Commission. The member there is a representative of the City of Madison, Madison Consolidated High Schools. We have a fantastic partnership with MCHS, and part of our primary economic development goals when coming into office was to integrate all of our economic development apparatus rather than contract out the services for economic development. And that involves expanding the partnership with Madison Consolidated High School to give them a seat on our Redevelopment Commission. As you know, there is generally conflict between TIF boards, such as our Redevelopment Commission, and the public schools because of the potential fiscal impact on other units of government, particularly the schools. And every year we go through a process where we provide an economic impact study or analysis to all of the units of government, particularly the school. But the partnership that we have with the City of Madison, Madison Consolidated High School has been invaluable, and it's been a key initiative of ours. We have also a partnership with them where we have funded the development of several programs such as Cub Manufacturing and Cub Engineering. And I would like to nominate and ask council to move to approve Principal Michael Gassaway to fill the vacant position that's been set aside for Madison School member.
Mr. Mayor, is this a council appointment?
It is council appointment.
I would move that we table the nomination until our next meeting so we can have some time to discuss, since we were given this about 2:30 today.
I'll second. Council, I would ask you to deny the motion. This is a critical position on our Redevelopment Commission, and it has produced results. The last 2 years have seen unparalleled economic development across our community, and that has been in partnership with Madison Consolidated High School. I don't see any reason to wait. As you know, there's a lot of activity going on from an economic development perspective now, and staying on schedule is critically important. I know we need to take a vote on Councilman Chatham's motion. My request would be for you to deny the motion and move forward with the appointment.
I think we should consider tabling this. This, we don't necessarily have to have a voting member of the school corporation on the redevelopment commission. They still, by state statute, have the advisory position, which Mr. Gasaway currently serves in. And given the short notice with which we received this, it would be nice just to have a little bit more time to think about it.
I think it's a very important appointment and
Are we ready for a roll call vote?
So may I ask a
Yes.
clarification
Yep.
question? If we're voting yes, we're voting yes to table?
Yes.
No is not to vote to table.
Yes.
Thank you.
Dan DiTillo,
Yes.
James Bartlett,
No.
Curtis Chatham,
Yes.
Josh Schaefer,
No.
Lucy DiTillo,
yes.
No.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion carries.
now table.
All right, reports of city officials. Hannah Fagen will present our event planning guide and requirements that was presented to the Board of Public Works yesterday.
Hi Council, so as the mayor said, this was presented to Board of Public Works yesterday. So I considered just pulling up that video and showing it to you guys, but I'm sure the mayor would not be happy if I did that.
What?
Pulling up the video from yesterday. So anyways, the mayor asked that I work to put this together to give events that are coming to Madison some guidance, just some oversight. Lucy will definitely want to get with you because we want to talk to VMI, have them review this as well. We just need to, as a city, know a little more from these events as to what their expectations are, what they require of the city, when these events are happening, just better organization coming from events so the city can better manage our time and be better organized and these events can be successful. So I'm gonna pull this up here. So I'm just going to give an overview of the general requirements site plan map, which seemed to raise a few flags because people were a little bit nervous about this, that there are a few events that have seen this already. A notification plan, pedestrian, crowd, and traffic management, event safety, waste and utility management, infrastructure, facilities, and park usage. So an overview, we have numerous events held in Madison each year, and these events range in size. So you'll see large crowds such as the crowds that attend the regatta and Chautauqua. And then you'll see smaller crowds at events such as our mayor's movies in the parks. You'll also see like the farmers market. That's an event that's held in Madison and draws a smaller crowd of locals. Every event requires planning and many require the use of city services. Some of the services that the city provides are the use of our streets, barricades, the city stage, trash pickup, electricity use, facility use, public safety officers, and much more. Better planning and management of these events will not only assist the event organizers, but it's going to assist the city in understanding the needs of these events and the requests for city services. So general requirements that you have, so you have my PowerPoint in front of you, but you also have a larger document, I believe, and if you don't, I can get you a copy of that. So in this larger document, it seems a little daunting because I believe it's 12 or 13 pages long, single space. It should not scare the events. What it does is on the front page, you'll see a checklist. Throughout the document, it gives an explanation as to what these items mean, and it even gives some samples. So we need an event detail or overview. What's included in this event detail overview is just what is this event, what's the goal of the event, what's the estimated number of attendance, where's this event being held, is this a public or private event, who's the targeted audience, what's the event dates and times, will you need city facilities, parks, We need stage. What sort of road closures are you looking at? Do you have entertainment, live performers, and activities? How are you promoting this? And some of this is so we can see this because there will be state permits that are required for some events. A lot of requests that we get that come to the city is people wanting to host movies in the park. They don't understand that this is a screen rewrite, and then also there's like movie licensing. So if we see these documents come through, we can help these events to understand there may be some bigger requirements that they just aren't aware of, or their road closure may require they put that with the state and not just the city. So again, street closure request, that's a form that we have. It's just been something that people highlight. There's not been great detail of saying this is where I need these barricades and these are the times I need the barricades. So that form will still be required, but there's greater detail that's going to be required with that. Events need to have public liability insurance, a contact list. This includes all of the event organizers, their emergency contacts. If they have vendors coming, we need to have that list, contact list, because we do need to set up inspections. And then the event running sheet. So an event running sheet sets the timing and sequence for these events. That's going to include the event is on this date, but this is the time we're closing the road. This is happening at this time. This is the time this road is closing. And sometimes it's just we're going to close the road for a short period of time to load in equipment. We're going to reopen it. Those are all things that need to be required on the event running sheet. So the site plan map. This is a plan map. So it's not just the little street closure map that we've been receiving. This is a map that's going to assist the City of Madison staff and our public safety officers to better understand the layout of the event footprint. The map needs to be clear, drawn to scale with a legend. It must identify all aspects of the event, so this is going to include equipment, activities, permanent and temporary infrastructures, crowd control infrastructures, road closures, fencing, pedestrian and vehicle access routes, emergency access routes, facilities, maybe things we've missed. You'll see there's two samples. I'm going to click through them real quick. So this is one, it's actually Jim's. We took a picture of it. He brought this in. It is for Riverfest, correct? Yes.
Riverfest.
So this is a map that it's huge. It covers an entire desk. They printed this on banner-like material, and they can change it if they need to, because the color coding you see there is electrical tape that's been marked. It's very clear what these items are when you see it in person. This picture's not that clear. There's two of these. There's one that is for the street department. There's one for the event organizer. So this is just one sample of the way to do things. The city also has just a generic black and white map that we can grab of any section of the city. We recommend color coding. We recommend saying this is what these items are. That's why the legend is required. This is just a smaller scale one, so this is one we use for our Halloween festivities, which just happened in Bicentennial Park. So we didn't need much. We needed electric from the city, and then the numbers you see, you don't see in this image, but they were all labeled. They were for our vendors to know this is where I am. I'm assigned to this number. This is where I'm going. And then it helped my team to check people in. So this is a smaller scale. We just did a screen grab and threw this together and had it on clipboards for all the volunteers I had, and they walked around checking people in. And it also helped us to see which people came, and we were able to thank them. So there's a few options. The city's happy to send other suggestions. There's programs such as Adobe software that event organizers can use. They can work with a sign company to get these maps printed. They can even use free programs such as Canva. A notification plan. So if a business or residential area is impacted by the event footprint, the event organizers must notify these businesses and residents. So you're thinking, I'm going to say Regatta, the Lighthouse is affected. That's a restaurant. The Chillbillies is affected. They need to notify these businesses that their event is happening and not just assume that the businesses know what's happening, because it happens every year. But they need to notify them and let them know, hey, this is going to be your access route. We're not closing your business. We've had concerns about that. We're not closing access to your business, but this is your access route. We're going to let you know that these road closures are happening. So most of the larger festivals will be required to send out a formal letter. There's also the option to do face-to-face interaction. I've walked Main Street many times talking to the businesses to let them know we're holding this event. I've talked to residents. We did door hangers for our Christmas festivities when we held them on Broadway, because we were closing part of the road that was a residential area and people had their vehicles parked there, which we needed moved because we were bringing in a little ice skating rink, and so we put out door hangers. We had one woman come up and talk to us. She didn't have concerns, she wasn't mad that we were doing it, she appreciated the notification, so that was a great way to let people know this. And then all events requesting street closures will need to assist in the notification of travelers through Madison, so the notification isn't just coming to residents and businesses, but to those traveling through Madison. So we need to advertise our street closures via media outlets, via Facebook. The city can publish that on our website. And then signage. Signage is important. You will see that repeated throughout this plan because we need to have proper signage, whether that be no parking signs, which are required to be placed 24 hours in advance, detour signs, road closure signs. The event organizers are responsible for placing those. Our team sets up barricades. The fiberglass ones, the event organizers are responsible for then setting those and monitoring those. And then the event organizers are responsible for putting out those no parking signs, which is not fun. I've done it in the rain and it's terrible. Another important aspect is pedestrian, crowd, traffic, and vehicle management. We want these events to be safe for those in our community and those visiting our community. So events really need to take safety into consideration and make plans to accommodate pedestrians, the crowds that will be in town, the traffic, and then vehicles. So you'll see, in regards to pedestrian management, entry and exit points, those need to be noted on the site map. There needs to be the correct number of entry and exit points. If you're having a large scale event, you need to make sure you have numerous entry and exit points so you don't have largely crowded areas. There needs to be access for people with disabilities and consideration for non-attendees. And what I mean by this is you're going to have people who are in town who aren't going to the events, but they're going to be walking Main Street. So you need to have some consideration for those people as well. Crowd management is important. These events need to have a crowd control strategy and security measures in place. Unfortunately, sometimes crowds become unruly, and the events need to have a management plan for this. If it's something that event security can handle, that's great. If it gets too unruly and the police department needs to be notified, there needs to be people assigned to these events that will make those phone calls and say we need backup support. Traffic management, again, like I said, signage, that's important. Barricades, barriers, and fencing. We need to make sure those are noted on the site plan maps, and then the city knows where these are being placed. Traffic controllers, and what I mean by this is unfortunately people move our fiberglass barricades because they don't weigh anything and they can get out and move them from whatever route they would like and drive their car through. So you have to have people with your event team constantly monitoring those. It's really unfortunate, but it happens. And then emergency access. With our traffic management, it's important that these event organizers work with our emergency response teams to make sure that emergency vehicles have access in case there is an incident. Vehicle management, what I mean by this is that event access points should remain secure, so we don't want events, and unfortunately we can't avoid every single situation, but we can take every measure to avoid accidents. But vehicles can get into some of the points of events. They can drive through barricades, so these need to be managed as fast as we can. Vehicles inside the event footprint should be monitored and locked when not in use. So you'll see some events that have vehicles inside the footprint that have brought in supply. One example is our Halloween festival. We had to have a few city trucks down there, and we made sure these were locked. Someone had the keys that was responsible, so someone couldn't jump in those trucks and injure anyone. And then drivers should have set guidelines and rules. And what's meant by this is some of our events allow vehicles. They allow golf carts. They allow motorized golf carts. I don't know what else they allow, but we need to have set guidelines and rules that need to be enforced so we don't have accidents. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration when forming this event plan. Event safety, again, event safety is key. So regardless of the size of the event, there will be risk associated with it, and it's important that event organizers consider these risks and take measures to mitigate the risk. One of these is first aid. my movies in the park are gonna need just a little first aid kit. Some of them are going to need a station set up where people know this is where I can go to get, you know, a bandage or whatever I need. An evacuation plan, so in case there is all of a sudden poor weather that comes through and we need to evacuate the place, or there's something else that's crazy, there needs to be a plan put in place. There needs to be people assigned to alert the public that you need to get out of here, take cover, do whatever it is. You cannot tell them where to go, but they need to have that set in stone and have people assigned to that task. A weather contingency plan. Most of our events occur outside, so someone needs to constantly be monitoring the weather and have a plan in case the event needs to be canceled or closed. Security. Events should have security or personnel on staff. Depending on the size of the event, that size of security is going to, you know, change. But security shouldn't be solely relied on by our City of Madison police. Events should really coordinate to have some security, especially these larger scale events. Event operations center. So what I mean by this is that some events that are on the larger scale need to have a center where emergency personnel, someone from the event organization, and whoever else is involved in the event safety can have a meeting point in case decisions need to be made. And the city needs all those contacts and needs to know where this is held. For example, regatta, because you have the boat races, they have that right there. They have emergency personnel ready on hand in case there's an incident. Coordination with public safety officers, that's key. We're going to ask that these event organizers make sure that they're meeting with our police department and our fire department as they're developing these plans. It doesn't mean that the police and fire are going to develop the plans for the events, but the events should be meeting with them to make sure decisions are going to be beneficial in making sure the community stays safe and visitors stay safe. Waste and utility management, something that has to be addressed because these heavier foot traffic does bring more waste, and these events do use our utilities. So events need to coordinate for removal of trash and materials. Sometimes this is going to mean bringing in your own team to remove that trash or pile it in one certain area. Sometimes this is you just need some extra trash barrels from the city, and then the events will be responsible to load those into one area afterwards. Street cleaning. Some events are going to require street cleaning afterwards just because of the amount of litter, so coordinating that, just so the city can schedule their team out for this. Disposal of cooking grease had to be highlighted on its own because we've had it poured down our storm drains before, and that should not occur. It should be, if you have some food trucks, they need to make a plan for disposing of their cooking grease. And then wastewater management. This is something you can work with the City of Madison wastewater team. They can provide great tanks. They can also give you some recommendations on who can help manage this. One of them is A1 Porter Potties, which is who I know a lot of the events use. They do a great job with managing this. Utilities, so use of city power and water. A lot of the events are going to need use of our power and use of our water. For water, it's a form in the water department office, and there is a fee assessed. With city power, there's going to be a fee assessed. We need to know what power needs to be turned on because we don't keep it on 24/7. And using the city power doesn't mean you have 24-hour access to the city electrician. Should you need an electrician, event organizers need to hire a reputable electrician, and in an emergency, that's when the city electrician can be called out. And then tripping hazards is located there because with the use of power and water lines, you're going to have cords, and events need to take every measure to prevent tripping hazards by covering these appropriately. Infrastructure, facilities, and parks. So all infrastructures need to be noted on the event organizer's site plan, and the infrastructures may be subject to inspection. So food trucks, those are always going to be subject to inspection. Say you're bringing in a Ferris wheel, that's going to need inspection. So seeing this on these site plans and seeing this in this full document that's required will help us to alert the event organizers of, hey, you need to set up this time to have this inspected. Jim had brought up, because he had seen the plan, he brought up some questions about commercial tents and versus pop-up tents and how we can protect the city parks and lawns with this, and we did make those changes, so review them and make sure they look okay. So we appreciate him bringing that up to us. And in regards to restrooms and hand washing facilities, these need to be noted on the site plan, and the event organizer is required for the cleaning and restocking of these. This includes city bathrooms and facilities in the site plan. I know that we have certain like chemicals or soap or whatever that we use, so sometimes it's going to be that the event will be charged for the use of the city's equipment in those facilities. But it is the event organizer's responsibility to make sure these are being cleaned and monitored throughout the event. Park facilities, these need to, if anyone's requesting a parks facility, thinking like Brown Gym, this needs to be requested and approved by the parks director ahead of time. I believe the document says 3 weeks in advance, because we just need to make sure that this isn't being used by other organizations and is available. Those facilities are going to require security. We don't want someone coming in and trashing the place, so we need to make sure someone's constantly monitoring it, and again require cleaning and restocking of the event organizers. And then outdoor parks, we need to make sure we're protecting the grassy areas, trees, flowers, shrubs, etc. That was the concern with the tents and weighting them down that Jim had brought up. And then no vehicle access. Our parks aren't used to just cruise your vehicle through. So we have some rules on that as well. But that is it. You have the bigger document, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just want to add to this, which is what prompted this, and that is that we have over 40 events for last year, just last year alone. Many of those were multi-day events. Many of them had thousands of people in town, and it's not just the footprint of the festival that's impacted, but it's the entire city, and that's why we felt we needed better coordination. I think this has been really thoughtful. Hannah's put a lot of work in this, and we'll continue to work with the event organizers. And again, if we have a good plan, then if there is a contingency, we'll be able to deal with it properly, and we want to deal with it safely. We've all read about incidents or tragedies that have happened at public events because of crazy people candidly, but also because while we can't predict every circumstance, we can certainly try to anticipate as many things as possible. With the volume of tourism we do in the community and the level of resources and coordination that's required by the city, all of city departments are involved in an event. We also spend thousands and thousands of hours supporting tourism, but the number one premise here is to make it safe for everybody. And we think that formalizing, the event process will get us there, rather than the very, very informal nature that has been happening before. Many of the festivals are already doing this. We just haven't been codified into a plan, and the Board of Public Works and Safety has never seen a plan. Not the 2 years that I've been on the board. But I think this is a good step forward in, again, being thoughtful and structured and methodical with public safety and a good experience for all.
Hannah, this is available on the website?
It is not yet. We are voting. There's going to be a resolution to say we're adopting this, and then it will be available on the website under the community relations page.
Very good.
The goal is to have that on the website, and then I will be the liaison in case anyone has any questions when formulating their plan or wants to know if a particular item applies.
Well, I would say that. So we introduced it yesterday to Board of Public Works and Safety. I think it's fine to put it online and start getting it previewed because we want to take action on it. If anybody wants to come to next week's April 18th Board of Public Works and Safety meeting and comment on it, that'd be the appropriate time to do it. Yeah.
Has this been, or will this be sent out to the annual events that?
So some of the events have received it, and it was like, hey, this is in draft form, but I know you're a bigger event, so I want to get this starting to look at this. So I actually have the list of all of the street closures that have come before Board of Public Works, so we'll be sending it out to them. And then anyone who comes into the City Hall or calls City Hall and wants to file a street closure request, they'll be given this.
And it will also be online, so they'll be able to access it easy. And then when they start the process for facility use or street closure, that really starts the coordination process, and then they'll have the guidelines to develop a plan when they come into Board of Public Works for the closure.
One thing I'd like to point out too is we pulled numbers from 1 year of just 5 events. 2 of them were very large scale event. Actually, sorry, 3 of them were very large scale events, and then 2 of them were smaller but still large scale events of just city hours, not working the event, but setting up for the event, putting out fencing, putting out barricades, tearing down. And those events in 1 year, there were 1,327 man hours from the street department alone.
Just in what, you said 5 events or
In
so?
5 events only. So it's a lot of work, a lot of dedication on the city part, and it's helpful for us to know ahead of time, this is what the expectations are, this is what these events need, rather than being told last minute, hey, we need these things. Because we have to schedule our team's time.
One other thing you might consider is putting a version or date or something on this so that as it does inevitably change in the future, people know what the latest version is and don't have to reread it to know.
Yeah, and one thing I pointed out to Board of Public Works is once an event does this, an event that is constantly returning to Madison, they won't have to change this much unless we make changes or unless their event footprint changes. But they will do it one time, we will have it. Every year they'll say, nothing's changed, here's this, or hey, we made these changes. But this first year is probably gonna be a little hard for these events to get through, because they've never been required to do something. But as the mayor said, a lot of these events already have these documents, we just haven't seen them. We haven't seen, you know, what their plans are. So this first year might be a little scary, but in the years to come it'll be easier. And then if we have a new event that comes into Madison that has never been here before, they'll have an idea of what the city expects of the event organizers.
And I think there was a question back there. I would just ask you to come to the podium and introduce yourself, name and address, please, if you don't mind.
My name is Mary Ann Eaglin, and I live on West 2nd Street. I would like to make the suggestion and comment that in connection with all of the festivals and everything that goes on in Madison, we would be well served, and the community would also, if we would consider some recycling initiatives. Possibly containers or whatever to encourage recycling. I know people are not very attuned to it sometimes, but some of us are. I've been recycling since I was in college many, many years ago. And I think it's something that we should encourage. There are comments being made that our planet, the climate change that is going on is doing a great part to this. And there are a lot of individuals who are working on projects to use this recycled material in productive ways. And I think if we would work with some of this, I think it would be, I know it's probably a little more time we're talking about for cleanup sorts of things, but it might be, you know, an overall advantage to the community. And I think it would look very well to visitors coming to this community who are seeing that Madison is trying to do their part in recycling and trying to clean up the environment and keep our world healthy, a little healthier. I don't think we can do too much in that respect.
Thank you, Ms. Eagle, I agree with you. And I know that some of the festivals already plan for recycling and can always do more. Jim, if you want to come in.
Yes, they're just, so that you are aware, there is one festival which unfortunately no longer occurs that did a lot of recycling. There's one festival that I'm very familiar with that does recycling on a smaller scale, and there's always discussion of expanding that scale. But there is some recycling that goes on now and has for several years.
Paige? you.
Hannah, thank you. All right, moving on, we invite Nicole Schell, Planning, Preservation, and Design, to give you an update on our blight elimination program.
Good.
Good evening. Just get my slides show up here for you. So I'm going to give a brief update on blight elimination, the program that the mayor initiated a couple of months ago. We're going to talk about nuisance cases. I'll give you an overview of where we're at on nuisance, unsafe structures, and then just a brief update on PACE. So nuisance cases, as you know, we hired, starting in January, our first full-time code enforcement officer. So he has been out and busy. He's reported on 126 cases this year, and at the beginning of April, he's already done 30 cases in the 4 days of April. So lots going on in that part of our department. Nuisances are broken into 4 different categories: abandoned vehicles, trash, vegetation, and stagnant water. So you can see most of the cases have been in trash, but we anticipate the vegetation is going to pick up since we're in the growing season now. All these numbers we're pulling off of our reporting software through iWork. So we moved about 2 months ago onto a digital platform that our code enforcement officer has access to out in the field. So he's able to log these cases in real time and take pictures with an iPad we've secured for him. And so it's been a really great process. As you can see, he's done 122 of the cases were noticed by our staff versus 4 that were reported to us by citizens. One of the great things about iWork is that citizens can go onto that platform and report cases, which will just help us, since we are a small department. It's basically the one person who's overseeing all of our code nuisance violations. So I definitely encourage you to go on that website and report cases if you see them. If you don't want to do it through that way, you can always call into the office or fill out a form in the office, and I've got the contact information later. But just a couple examples of our nuisance violations. We see some trash, you can see some junk scattered around a property, abandoned vehicles, which includes those that are inoperable, like the one on the slide, and also appliances that are just sitting outside. So all of our cases go through an abatement process. All of the owners are notified and given 5 days to abate the issue from the date of the letter. We post-date that letter a little bit to accommodate for mailing. Most of the time, our property owners have done a great job and abated those issues themselves, and we appreciate that. But on rare occasions, the city has to hire a contractor to abate the work. So we've had 8 so far. Know that we've got a couple of work orders in the works, but then those fees, whatever the city's cost in on it, goes to the property owner, and they're given a time to pay for that amount. And just a couple examples of some before and afters or different issues that have been abated. A variety of things from tall shrubbery. Yes, there was a house behind all the shrubs that you couldn't see. Some trash, and a couple of properties that demo was either cleaned up or the building was fully demolished. So like I said, definitely help us out and contact Dewey O'Neill is our code enforcement officer. His contact information is on the slide, but you can always just call into the main number and go through the prompts to get our office. Another category for our blight elimination is unsafe structures. The building inspector has quite a list of properties that he's reviewing. 25 have been already determined as unsafe.
over the course of the last couple of years, and letters have been issued to those owners. 13 on our original list were deemed not unsafe, so we've put them on kind of a watch list just to make sure that we're watching them and make sure they don't get to that point of unsafe. And then you can see he's got a little bit more work ahead of him. He's got 51 on the list to schedule inspections. He's actually already done a couple of those since I put this PowerPoint together. But just an example of some unsafe structures, both Hilltop and downtown. Some are because of fires or other causes. Others are just untaken care of and unfortunately succumb to the elements around them. So most of these have already been demolished or fixed. There's one on this list I'm not sure what the status is because it's an older issue. But similar process to the unsafe structures as nuisance. All property owners that are deemed unsafe receive a letter. They're given ample amount of time to either fix the structural issues that are making the properties unsafe, or they can choose to demolish the structures. We've had a couple, as you can see, 5 that have gone that route. Others, 16 of them, they were issued unsafe and they're working to correct those issues. Some of those have gotten case grants to do that. So if you think that there's a unsafe structure in your neighborhood, you can call and report through the iWork platform also any unsafe structures through our building inspector, Scott Gross. I did want to touch a little bit on PACE because we are helping fund some of these blighted structures. So total since 2014, the program has funded $1.6 million, which was matched by $5.2 million from property owners. So it's been a great investment. You can see there's of the 16 dilapidated structures, several of them have applied for PACE, like I mentioned. So the $675,000 the city's funded has been matched by $2 million. So we are funding those changes. And you can see a couple of great examples here. One on Walnut Street, that White House, which was a brick structure that had a fire. They received a dilapidated structures fund from PACE, and so now they're working on the 2 next door. And then the other one is on Park Avenue, and they're working on this as well as the greenery next door. And they just really transformed those structures. We do still have funding available through PACE. We take applications on a rolling basis, and they meet every other month. So I've provided my contact information. All of our information on the PACE grant is available on the website also. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
When people use the online system to report violations, are they required to give their contact information?
We do ask for contact information just in case we need additional information, but that will not be provided to anyone who requests it.
For the 6 properties where there's a letter issued, no action, what's that mean?
Yeah, so occasionally we send out letters that we think that a building may be unsafe, but we haven't been through to inspect it. So they have passed the deadline. We give them 10 business days to reach out to the office to schedule the inspection. So they just haven't met that deadline. So we're continuing to reach out and try to get a hold of the property owners on those.
You know, the implementation of iWork and integrating to that platform has helped us manage this a lot better. The commitment for preservation is extremely strong, as you've seen by those numbers. But on the other end of the spectrum is code enforcement, which is why we made the investment in a full-time code enforcement officer to deal with the problem and working with the street department, police department, doing what we need to, as well as, you know, it really, a lot of it boils down to what level of cooperation we get from the property owner. In many instances, you know, properties have sat in a dilapidated condition only to worsen for years and years, and in some instances, a decade or two, and those are harder problems to solve, but engaging with the property owner is really, really key in some solutions here. Any questions for Nicole? Nicole, thanks. All right, Tony, economic development.
Good evening. Thanks, Council, for this time tonight. In your packet was a much more extensive, the full financial update from the Redevelopment Commission for the year 2021. Tonight I'll quickly overview for the Council and the public the main highlights of that annual financial report. It is an obligation of state statute to go through a number of reporting periods for the Redevelopment Commission throughout the year. This is report on the previous year's activities to you, the fiscal and executive body of our community. You will note that we have 5 current allocation areas. There will be 6 next year when we have this report because of the super ATV allocation area that is yet to be declared by the RDC, but will happen at the next May meeting. You'll notice that at this time, all of our allocation is coming from the main North Madison allocation area, the original TIF district. Over time, that will start to change as we start to get development in the Madison Plaza allocation area as well as the super ATV allocation area. Those dollars will start to shift into other areas. Our projects for 2021, you can see a long list of those projects. Many of those supported economic development activity in the community, the cotton mill, acquiring and having site control over the Madison grocery store site, sidewalk improvements throughout the community, and then matches to a number of our grant programs that are being used for road work and other infrastructure projects. The 3 projects at the bottom were the stellar projects that you and other councils have supported throughout the years. Is there any questions or comments about the Madison Redevelopment Commission's annual report? Any other questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you, John. All right, moving on. Clerk Treasurer Rampy.
Good evening, Council.
Your last department report. Yep.
So I just wanted to give you an update on what we've been working on in the Clerk Treasurer's office.
Hey, I might ask you to get a little closer to your mic, so I'm not sure if they can hear you or not, but. Turn your microphone. There. There we go. Thank you.
Anyway, our priorities have changed from day one, but there's feeling constant life has changed, and so here we go. So our first goal upon becoming Clerk Treasurer was to work to improve financial and internal controls for the city. We had one centralized credit card that was we just felt like that it would be more responsible for each department head to have their own credit card so that we could have an easier and more accurate accounting of expenditures from each department instead of trying to track on the back end of who was spending what and where that money was going. So the other thing that we're working on as far as improving financial and internal controls is that as Clerk Treasurer, I am currently reviewing every claim that comes through our office. What has become our second priority is working to ensure that we are getting the right people in the right place. We've currently hired 1 deputy clerk and are in the process of hiring the second one. We will continue to work with Reading Financial, who has been a tremendous asset to the city and their staff to ensure that our new clerks are well trained in State Board of Accounts best practices. That is what we intend to use as our guideline. We are also working towards streamlining the payroll process. Currently, it is extremely labor intensive. We are looking to move away from paper time cards to an online payroll program, and we are currently evaluating options available to the city. This will allow us to be able to track and approve time off more accurately and control of accrued balances for each employee, and to ensure stronger payment accuracy for each employee. We are also working towards restructuring the roles of the deputy clerks. I've managed a lot of staff across multiple offices, and I've learned and appreciate the value of cross-training. None of us have a crystal ball, and therefore we need to be able to plan appropriately for planned and unplanned time off for staff. And if they aren't cross-trained, that creates issues in any office. I would also like to take the time to specifically thank all those who jumped in right away to assist not only me, but to ensure the continued financial success of the city. So thank you to Gina Centers, Kim Eaglin, Tammy Acosta, Minnie McGee, Jenna Armstrong, Alyssa Foltz, and Brooke and Caitlin from Reedy Financial, who've been a huge help and they've had a tremendous amount of experience in assisting cities with these types of transitions. This is not their first go around in this realm. And I'd like to thank Mayor Courtney as well for his support and ensuring that we were able to get Reedy in so quickly. So, any questions?
What's the timing on the finishing out your staffing?
Actually going to go up and send out my second job offer after this.
Fantastic. Transitions can be difficult. Katie and Reedy have done a really good job. The rest of the city's done a good job too of helping facilitate the transition. And so there's some opportunity here to modernize systems, and I think that'll be a primary benefit of the things that Katie's working on. All right, moving on, I'll turn it back over to Rob. We have no bills on third reading, but we do have bills on second reading.
Okay, you have ordinance number 2022-1, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, amending certain portions of the City of Madison Cable Advisory Ordinance and interlocal agreement as found in Chapter 33.120 of the City of Madison Municipal Code. Your second read. And then ordinance number 2022-2, an ordinance of the City of Madison, Indiana, amending interlocal agreement regarding 911. That's second reading.
Are we discussing both these together?
Well, let's take them one at a time, if that's okay. Is that okay, Rob? I mean,
Certainly, yeah. I think if there was discussion, I'd probably jump the gun on reading the second one.
Okay.
Why don't we have discussion with respect to ordinance number 2022-1, and then I'll reread the second one after the discussion for the first one is completed.
Sponsor of the first ordinance is Councilman Bartlett. Maybe you want to just highlight what's entailed in that ordinance.
Well, there are literally two changes to the existing agreement that are in the ordinance. Their second change is the simplest of the bunch, and that is a rewording in the original ordinance. Agreements with the cable companies were approved by the local governmental units. That's no longer the case. Excuse me. Those agreements are now handled by the state of Indiana. So we're simply removing the wording that says currently approved by local governmental units.
Jim, I ask you to hit your mic, please, just so we can pick it up on the camera too. Thank you. Yep.
The first change in the ordinance, though, is a little bit more complicated, not much. The board simply had too many members to be effective. I know that sounds contradictory, but there comes a point where you've got too many people trying to handle things, and we needed to reduce that number down So we're reducing the number of members of the board from 3 members from each governmental unit down to 2. And that's the other change that is in this ordinance.
Thank you, Jim. Any comments or questions?
How is the reduction in members gonna occur?
It makes it much easier for, well, how's it going to occur?
Yeah, who gets kicked
Well,
off or is it expiration?
actually, the number of members today actually meets this requirement. So there won't be anybody physically removed from the board.
Any additional comments or questions? Anybody from the audience? Council, all for this. Does anybody want to suspend the rules and move third reading?
I would prefer to wait till the next meeting to finalize this.
Okay. Okay. All right, move on.
Can we next have ordinance number 2022-2? The caption that you have doesn't really say it, but it's an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, regarding an amended interlocal agreement regarding emergency dispatching, communications, and other services, commonly known as 911.
So the council and the public, this is an ordinance that's being taken up by several different groups in our county, just in agreement with our 911 dispatch. So the commissioners, the county council, the city council are all voting on this same ordinance. And, you know, it's agreements on how it will be run, but also on what happens to money that's left over at the end of the fiscal year. I think Appendix A kind of tells you how things are divided out. Thank you.
Councilman DeTillo is the sponsor of this ordinance. Any other comments or questions? Any councilman want to suspend the rules and move this to third reading?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rules and move to the third reading.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Yes. DeTillo?
Yes.
Schaefer?
Yes.
Chatham?
Yes.
Bartlett?
Yes.
Dan DeTillo?
Yes.
Guess I get to read again.
Read again.
Right. Didn't realize I'd be so busy. This would be ordinance number 2022-2, an ordinance of the Common Council of the City of Madison, Indiana, regarding amending the interlocal agreement regarding emergency dispatching, communications, and other services, commonly known as 911.
Roll call vote? Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Krebs?
Yes.
DeTillo?
Yes.
Joshua Schaefer?
Yes.
Chatham?
Yes.
Bartlett?
Yes.
DeTillo?
Yes.
All right, thank you, council. Council, will any miscellaneous items be brought before us tonight?
I had a few questions from constituents. First was regarding the park entrance at Hargan Matthews Park down in the river, and is there an update on a gate made for that park?
We get a lot of comments about gates, and we are looking into it. We've actually talked to a contractor. It needs to be ADA accessible. That's going to create a workaround that has to happen there, but it is something that is a priority, so we are going to get a new gate. We are going to get a gate. We just have to solve the ADA accessibility issues.
Okay. And the second, I received some questions about the beer wine permit that was applied for at the Wheeler building, I believe. Was that something you can provide an update on?
Yes, so as you know, and Tony didn't mention this tonight, but we did receive a grant from Duke Energy for some economic development. It was a $5,000 grant. We're using that to update our market study. We're continuing to discuss with operators. The investment of a grocery store here is our #1 downtown economic development priority. But there's one grocery store liquor license that's available in the county, and we've applied for it. We believe that along with the site control, is going to enhance our attraction for a private operator to come to the grocery store. Yeah, thank you. Anything else? All right, let's move to public comments. Anybody here in the audience would like to come to the podium and address the mayor's office or city council? Now would be the time. Just ask you to identify yourself, your name, rank, and serial number. Do appreciate everyone being here, and Mr. Barger's class, is always great to see you guys in our class. It's fantastic. We love our students, and we love our students being engaged in government. You saw tonight a pretty interesting meeting with lots of different topics across the board, and swearing in two of our very, very invaluable public safety officers. So thank you guys for coming here. My comments will be brief. We've had a long meeting, a lot of topics and updates from the department heads. You probably already have read, but and Nicole has left, but we are in the process of doing two things with regards to our historic district. One is updating the historic survey of all of the properties in the downtown historic landmark district. That is really critical because it is the document that defines what's contributing and non-contributing, what those characteristics are, so that we can be very strategic, and the Historic District Board of Review and the community can also be very well informed when they are working on their properties or acquiring a property. In partnership with the survey is something that is also going on right now, and that is an update to the Historic District Board Review guidelines. It has been probably a couple of decades since that has happened, and there was a committee formed by the Historic District Board of Review to work with a consultant on drafting guidelines. Those have been viewed and exchanged in public meetings, and there'll probably be another public meeting, and then it will start the, once a recommendation is prepared by the Historic District Board of Review, then it will start the process where it will come through City Council and the Mayor's office, because we, as part of the ordinance, approve the guidelines. And then last but not least, we've been talking for probably about 9 or 10 months, maybe even longer, about our water project, our $13 million project, which we've made application to with the Indiana Finance Authority for financing. We are still waiting to hear back from them with regards to the debt and potentially grants that they'll offer to offset the cost for that project. But it is, now that the water rate study is prepared, we can start bringing that ordinance through the process for discussion with regards to establishing new water rates. As you've heard us talk about, as we've talked about here, it's been 20 years since significant investment's been made in our water infrastructure. We're really at a critical time to do it, based on recommendations from our Indiana Department of Environmental Management Water Division and the very, very comprehensive asset management plan that we had worked on, probably finished it up over a year ago. So that rate ordinance process will begin at the April 19th City Council meeting. There'll certainly be public input on all of that. There'll be a public hearing. I think the public hearing will probably occur by mid-May. So lengthy process to still work through there in order to approve the rates, and that is what actually would allow us to borrow the money to make the investment in our water. I'll leave it there unless there are questions, and our next council meeting is Tuesday, April the 19th.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nobody wants to stay? Thank you, everybody. Rob, thank you. Ditch inning, so to speak. Joe's probably fixing it.
It's a managing.
Oh.
Get hard.
Even with a cushion.
Well, 8% they can play.